When the problems have been there for a long time, and nobody's even saying shit about it,
Yeah.
that makes you think, they're not doing shit about it.
So what? You
They
think
don't
they
care.
got? You think they just have all the employees? What do you think they are working on then?
Making money.
You know what? I think Frildren actually has a point here. But wait a minute. Isn't that what a company is supposed to do? Try and make some fucking money? Even if it is at the expense of the quality of the game itself? I remember back at the end of 2011, I had just installed my copy of the latest Elder Scrolls game, Skyrim. Once I got past all the opening stuff, I immediately went out exploring, because that's what you're supposed to do in a fucking Elder Scrolls game. I wasn't even 2 hours in before I saw some fucking woolly mammoth floating around in the fucking sky. And then, even after a few days of playing, I encountered the Esbern glitch.
Happening is in I think 3 quests. Esbern does not talk at all, and it just makes the quest a pain in the ass. And at one quest, you literally you're sitting at a desk and you can't get out of it, and you're waiting for Esbern to talk, but he never talks.
This is not the first time that Bethesda has released the game in an unfinished state. Fallout New Vegas, which had just been released a year before, had a lot of the same problems that Skyrim had. These issues are not just the Bethesda problem. Open world games have been the guiltiest of unfinished releases. Because of the sheer size and scope of these games, they are so much more difficult to develop. It is next to impossible for a developer to anticipate every move that a player is going to make in a game that is so large in scope. That is why I'm picking on Bethesda here, since they specialize in these types of games. But open world games are not the only type of games that have difficult launches. Games with always online as a requirement tend to also have launch issues. With a large influx of new players, the servers for the games end up crashing. This ultimately causes downtime for single player games. We saw this in the release for SimCity 5, which boasted downtimes of many fucking hours. Most players couldn't even get into the game for the first couple of weeks. Now, these are just the problems with single-player games. When we start to talk about online multiplayer games at launch, a shit ton of more problems can arise. MMO releases are the biggest offender of this. Publishers for MMOs very rarely prepare for a large population on launch, therefore they don't usually invest in the proper amount of servers. This causes huge fucking queues for players. I remember when ArcAge first launched, I would spend 3 hours just waiting in queue so I could play for a couple of hours just to have the game fucking crash on me. And then of course I'd have to wait another 4 to get back in.
Standing out here yelling rabble, rabble, rabble isn't going to help anything.
But we don't know what else to do, Mayor!
We are seeing this right now with the free-to-play conversion of WildStar. At least they have already started to fix the problem by adding more servers in. A lot of developers are forced by publishers to rush games to a launch date. This is because of the old saying that time is money. Basically, having a shorter period for a game to be worked on means that you don't have to pay developers as much to work on it. Games require a lot of work and testing before it can be sold though. This is because video games are an interactive media, meaning that there are millions of ways a player can play the game. Sure, one playthrough went fine for this tester, but another tester might have walked more to the left and fell through some fucking invisible hole or some shit like that. When a game is rushed to a launch, testing is the first area that generally suffers. A lot of video games nowadays are still in development, even after it is released. Between patches, DLC, and content updates, these games are worked on for years, sometimes even decades.
I am a really bad programmer. I write bugs. I forget to write tests. I write documentation that isn't really in English. And in a code review, I am the most apologetic person you will ever see, which for some of the people in the audience may come as quite a surprise.
Unfortunately, this kind of work costs a lot of money. The developers of these games are in a constant juggle to keep not only their players happy, but also their investors. And sometimes this can cause them to focus less on fixes and more on ways to make more money. I believe one of the biggest offenders of this is Grand Theft Auto 5. Now let me be clear here, I love all the content updates for this game. GTA 5 is now over 2 years old, and it still feels fresh and new. The free mode events that were just added last month have created a whole new aspect of the game, and we have been having so much fucking fun playing through the different events.
Here we go. Aha! Yeah!
Oh, yeah, baby.
Sorry, Mike, I had to.
There you go.
With that said, though, I do have to ask myself, why is it that we keep on getting updates like this, yet we can't play for more than 3 fucking hours without one of us getting kicked out of the fucking session?
And everybody just left. Fucking A.
Now you left.
Now you can make it back, you still got 8 minutes, no problem. Or that there is always releases of new cars like every other month, yet every other session is ruined by some fucking hacker or modder. Well, the answer to these questions is very simple. Shark cards. This is what you can buy with real money to give you money in-game. Let me break it down with these 2 examples. Every new vehicle for the game costs you in-game money, and generally, a lot of it. Like a new car might cost over $1 million in-game. While it might take you 6 to 8 hours to grind out $1 million, it only takes you a few seconds to go into the shark card store and spend $20 of real-life money to get over $1 million. Now, if we look at the free roam events, you might find yourself spending $20,000 on ammo, and another $5,000 on things like deaths and body armor. Oh, and don't forget about those 3 player-owned vehicles that you destroyed to get that fucking #1 position in the match. Those each cost you about $9,000. So altogether, you're looking at spending around $50,000 to win a match that will pay you maybe $15,000. Now, I'm not saying Rockstar is the only company guilty of this. I am looking at you, STO, and your fucking characters that don't move their damn mouths, yet you charge me $30 for a new fucking ship. But I use this as an example of a common practice to balance profits and gameplay. While the intentions of the developers are usually good, games are getting harder and harder to release in a perfect working state. The interactive nature of video games alone makes it next to impossible to fix every little issue that pops up here and there. It can be real tough to balance between their player base and their need to keep the game profitable. All that we ask as gamers is that these developers try not to ever let that balance tip over too much to the profit side. We want great games. And for that, we will give these developers more money.